To the galaxy, Earth was just another quiet world, primitive, fractured, ripe for conquest. But the Kethver made a fatal mistake. They thought we were unaware. They thought we were weak. They didn't know the truth. We saw them coming centuries ago, and we've been preparing ever since. The quiet planet commander Zekthos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Void Piercer, watching the blue-green planet spin slowly on the main display. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced efficiency, while his compound eyes analyzed the data streams flowing across multiple screens. The third planet of this unremarkable system had caught his attention 3 cycles ago during a routine expansion survey. The planet called itself Earth. According to the primitive radio signals his ships had intercepted, the inhabitants seemed to be a bipedal species that had barely mastered chemical propulsion and nuclear fission. Their civilization appeared fractured into hundreds of separate territories, constantly engaged in petty conflicts over resources and ideology, perfect for conquest. Status report, Zekthos commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 worlds for the Kethver Syndicate. Lieutenant Mordok, his second in command, approached with a data tablet clutched in her primary manipulator. The target world shows all signs of a Class 4 civilization. Commander, limited space presence, primitive energy production, and no evidence of faster-than-light capability. Population approximately 8 billion, across 7 major lands. Zekthos nodded approvingly. 8 billion sentients would provide excellent labor resources for the Syndicate's mining operations. Military capabilities, basic kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and limited nuclear arsenals, Mordok replied. Their most advanced vessels appear to be simple orbital platforms and short-range exploration craft. No energy shields, no plasma weaponry, no gravitational manipulation detected. Excellent. Zekthos turned to his communications officer. Prepare the standard conquest broadcast. All major population centers should receive it simultaneously. Give them the usual terms. Surrender their governments and submit to Syndicate rule, or face orbital bombardment. As the message was prepared and transmitted across Earth's communication networks, Zekthos allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be another easy addition to the Syndicate's growing empire. The humans would see his fleet of 30 warships hanging in their sky and quickly realize the futility of resistance. On Earth, in a nondescript office building in Geneva, Dr. Sarah Chen received the alien transmission at the same time as every other communications device on the planet. Unlike most humans, however, she was not surprised. She had been expecting this day for 23 years. Ever since joining the Global Defense Initiative after her graduation from MIT, Sarah immediately activated her secure communication device. Control, this is Station 7. The package has been delivered. Confirmed, Station 7. Came the reply from a voice that carried no national accent. Implementing Protocol Omega. All stations report readiness status around the world. Similar conversations took place in dozens of languages. In a bunker beneath the Australian outback, former Admiral James Morrison began activating defense systems that had been dormant for decades. In the mountains of Tibet, Dr. Yuki Tanaka started the sequence that would bring humanity's orbital defense platforms online. In the Amazon rainforest, Colonel Maria Santos opened the sealed orders she had carried for 15 years. The Global Defense Initiative had been founded in secret after the Roswell incident, but not for the reasons the public believed. The crash in 1947 had not been first contact, it had been the 23rd. Humanity had been visited by alien species for over 2 centuries, and each encounter had taught them valuable lessons about survival in a hostile galaxy. Back on the Void Piercer, Zekthos waited for Earth's inevitable surrender message. Instead, his communications officer looked up with confusion. Commander, we're receiving a response, but it's not what we expected. The main screen flickered, and the image of a middle-aged human woman appeared. She wore a simple black uniform with no visible rank insignia, and her expression was calm, almost serene. Greetings, Commander Zekthos of the Kethver Syndicate, Dr. Chen said, her voice clear and steady. I am Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking on behalf of the Global Defense Initiative. We have been monitoring your approach for the past 3 months. Zekthos felt a chill run down his primary spine. 3 months. That was impossible. His ships had been using full stealth capabilities during their approach, Dr. Chen continued. We appreciate your offer of conquest, but we must respectfully decline. Instead, we would like to extend a counter-offer. You have exactly 1 hour to begin withdrawing from our solar system. This is not a negotiation. Lieutenant Mordok hissed in outrage. Commander, this primitive dares to threaten us. But Zekthos was studying the human's face more carefully. There was no fear in her eyes. No desperate bravado. She spoke with the confidence of someone holding superior cards in a deadly game. Dr. Chen, Zekthos said, his voice measured. I think you misunderstand the situation. I have 30 warships, capable of reducing your cities to ash. Your species has nothing that could threaten vessels of this magnitude. Sarah smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Commander, you've done your homework on current human technology, but you've made a critical error in your research. You've only studied what we wanted you to see. The transmission ended, leaving Zekthos staring at an empty screen. Before he could respond, alarms began sounding throughout his ship. "Commander," the sensor operator called out, "panic clear." In his voice, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Ships are decloaking everywhere." The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Sleek, angular vessels were emerging from behind asteroids, from the shadows of moons, and from positions that should have been empty space. The ships bore no resemblance to the primitive craft the Kethver had observed in their surveys. "How many?" Zekthos demanded. "Over 200 contacts and climbing, sir. Their energy signatures are..." "Commander, these readings don't match any known technology. The power levels are off our charts." Zekthos watched in growing horror as more ships appeared. They moved with precision and coordination that spoke of advanced tactics and superior technology. Worse, they were surrounding his fleet in a perfect three-dimensional formation that would make escape impossible. Sir Mordok whispered, "The energy readings from those ships. They're not using fusion or antimatter. It's something else entirely." A new transmission came through, this time from a different human. This one wore the uniform of a military officer, his silver hair marking him as elderly by human standards, but his eyes sharp with intelligence. "Commander Zekthos, I am Admiral James Morrison of the Terran Defense Fleet. Dr. Chen asked me to clarify our position, since you seemed confused." The Admiral's voice carried decades of command authority. "What you're seeing now is a small fraction of humanity's true military capability. We have been preparing for visitors like you for over 200 years. The Admiral gestured, and the display behind him showed technical readouts that made Zekthos' blood run cold. Energy weapon designs that surpassed Kethver technology by centuries. Shield systems that could withstand direct hits from capital ship weapons. Faster-than-light drives that operated on principles the Syndicate had never even theorized. "You see, Commander, we've had many teachers over the years. The Grellan tried to conquer us in 1823. They left behind some very interesting wreckage. The Vorthan Collective sent a scouting force in 1889. We learned much from their remains. The Zelthran Empire attempted invasion in 1932. They provided excellent examples of energy weapon technology." Morrison's smile was cold as space itself. "Each species that tried to conquer humanity taught us something new. We studied their technology, adapted it, improved upon it. We built weapons and defenses that combined the best innovations from dozens of civilizations, and we waited." Zekthos felt his confidence crumbling. "That's impossible. The Galactic Council would have records of these incursions?" "The Galactic Council has records of ships disappearing in this region of space," Morrison replied. "They've classified this entire system as a hazard zone. They call it the Silent Quarter because expeditions sent here never return. We've been very careful to maintain that reputation." The sensor operator's voice cracked with fear. "Commander, more ships are declining. I count over 5 now, and they're still appearing." Morrison leaned forward. "You have 43 minutes remaining. Commander, I suggest you use them wisely." Zekthos closed the channel and turned to his bridge crew. Every face showed the same expression of shock and fear that he felt in his hearts. They had stumbled into a trap that had been centuries in the making. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "I'm detecting similar transmissions being sent to ships throughout the galaxy. The humans are broadcasting our sensor readings to what appears to be every major civilization." The implications hit Zekthos like a physical blow. Not only had humanity been hiding their true capabilities, they were now revealing the Kethver Syndicate's weakness to every potential enemy and rival. The political ramifications would be catastrophic. "Commander," Lieutenant Mordok said, her voice barely a whisper, "what are your orders?" Zekthos looked at the tactical display, where human ships continued to appear like deadly flowers blooming in the darkness of space. Each vessel represented technology and knowledge that the Syndicate had never encountered. They were facing an enemy that had been preparing for this moment for longer than most civilizations had existed. For the first time in his military career, Commander Zekthos faced a simple truth. He was completely, utterly outmatched. "Signal the fleet," he said finally. "All ships assume defensive positions, and get me a direct channel to the Syndicate High Command. They need to know what we've found here." As his communications officer worked to establish the connection, Zekthos continued to stare at the display. The quiet planet had revealed itself to be anything but defenseless. Humanity had been playing a game of galactic proportions, and they had been playing it for far longer than anyone had imagined. The hunt that he had expected to be had become something else entirely. The predator had become the prey, and Earth's children were showing the galaxy exactly why their world had earned its reputation as a place where conquerors came to disappear. The Hidden Truth. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened. Within hours of receiving the broadcast from the Sol system, representatives from 300 civilizations gathered in the massive crystalline chamber that orbited the neutral world of Nexus Prime. The air hummed with tension as holographic displays showed the impossible. A primitive world had not only defeated a Kethver assault fleet, but had done so with technology that surpassed most council members. Chancellor Vex, Sada, an ancient being whose crystalline form had presided over the council for 8 centuries, called for order. Her voice resonated through translation matrices into hundreds of languages simultaneously. We have called this emergency session to address the situation in the Sol system. The species known as humans have revealed capabilities that contradict all previous intelligence. In the gallery designated for the Kethver Syndicate, Ambassador Lekulan shifted nervously. The political fallout from Commander Zekthos' failed invasion was already beginning. 3 client species had declared independence in the past 6 hours. Sensing weakness in the Syndicate's military reputation, the Council's archives show 17 separate expeditions to the Sol system over the past 4 centuries. Chancellor Vexera continued, none returned. The system was classified as a navigation hazard and placed under observation protocols. However, new evidence suggests a more disturbing truth. The central holographic display shifted to show archival footage. Ancient recordings from various civilizations showed ships departing for the region of space containing Earth. Each expedition had been confident, well-armed, and technologically superior to what they expected to find. None had ever sent a single transmission after entering the system. Counselor Rathak of the Darien Collective rose from his designated platform. The implications are clear. This species has been systematically destroying or capturing our expeditions for centuries. They have violated every law of civilized contact, have they? The voice came from the chamber entrance, causing a ripple of shock throughout the assembly. A group of humans walked calmly down the central aisle, led by a tall woman with silver hair and wearing the same black uniform that Dr. Chen had displayed during her transmission to the Kethver fleet. Chancellor Vexera's form flickered with surprise. This session is closed to non-council species. How did you gain access to this chamber? The lead human stopped at the center of the floor and looked up at the Chancellor with steady eyes. Director Elena Bosca's Global Defense Initiative. We've been observing this council for 97 years. Chancellor, your security systems were designed by the Altarian Technology Guild. We helped them develop those systems. The chamber erupted in shocked voices and agitated movements. The idea that a non-spacefaring species had been secretly observing the Galactic Council was impossible to accept. Director Vasquez waited for the noise to subside before continuing. We come today to correct the historical record and prevent what could become a tragic misunderstanding. Yes, ships have disappeared in our system, but not because we destroyed them unprovoked. She activated a device on her wrist, and new holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. The images showed detailed records of every alien contact in Earth's history, complete with communication logs, battle footage, and technical analysis. The first contact occurred in 1647, Vasquez said as the display showed a sleek vessel approaching Earth. The Zirathi Dominion sent a research expedition to study what they called developing primitive life. Their mission logs, which we recovered from their ship's wreckage, clearly stated their intention to harvest genetic samples and establish breeding facilities for slave labor. The recording showed Zirathi soldiers attacking human settlements, abducting civilians, and conducting horrific experiments. It also showed the human response, desperate improvised defenses that gradually became more sophisticated as they adapted captured alien technology. We did not seek conflict, Vasquez continued. We defended ourselves, and from each attack, we learned. Counselor Rathak interrupted angrily. You claim self-defense, yet you admit to keeping our technology. Your technology. Vasquez turned to face him directly. The Zarathi used weapons powered by Zephyrian energy crystals, shields based on Corvanian field theory, and ships built with Altarian hull compounds. They had stolen or traded for every piece of technology they possessed, just as most spacefaring civilizations do. We simply continued that tradition. The display shifted to show the next major contact, the Ground expedition of 1823. Unlike the Zirathi, the Ground had come with the explicit intention of conquest, believing humans to be an inferior species, suitable only for manual labor. The recordings showed Grellan forces attempting to establish orbital bombardment platforms before being surprised by human defenders using modified Zarathi weapons. Each species that came to our world brought new challenges and new opportunities, Vasquez explained. The Vorthon Collective in 1889 introduced us to energy weapons and faster-than-light communication. The Zelthron Empire in 1932 taught us about shield technology and gravitational manipulation. The hegemony of Kree in 1967 showed us advanced metallurgy and quantum computing. With each example, the display showed the same pattern: aggressive alien forces arriving with conquest or exploitation as their goal, followed by human adaptation and eventual victory. But the recordings also showed something else that surprised many council members. After each conflict, humans had attempted to make peaceful contact with the invaders' home civilizations. We sent diplomatic missions to 17 different species over the past 3 centuries, Vasquez revealed. Each time, we offered to return captured personnel and shared defensive technology in exchange for peaceful relations. Every single offer was rejected. Most were met with demands for immediate surrender and threats of total annihilation. Chancellor Vexera processed this information with growing amazement. You're saying that your species has been attempting diplomatic contact for centuries? Not just attempting, succeeding? Vasquez smiled and gestured toward the gallery sections. We've had formal diplomatic relations with 43 species for over a century. They've simply been discreet about it. The chamber fell silent as representatives looked around nervously. Slowly, members from various species began to stand. First the Altarians, then the Korvac Federation, followed by the Stellar Republic of Tau Ceti. Within minutes, nearly a quarter of the council had acknowledged formal relationships with humanity. Ambassador Kelter of the Altarians spoke first. The humans contacted us in 1903 after studying wreckage from a hegemony ship. They offered to return 3 Altarian prisoners and share their analysis of hegemony weaknesses. In exchange, they asked only for information about galactic civilizations and trade routes. They've been our most reliable intelligence source for decades, added Counselor Zara of the Korvac Federation. Human analysis of alien technology and tactics has prevented at least 12 major conflicts between our species and hostile civilizations. Vasquez nodded. We learned early that the galaxy was a dangerous place for isolated species. Rather than hiding or conquering, we chose a third path, building a network of mutually beneficial relationships with civilizations that shared our values of cooperation and peaceful development. The revelations sent shockwaves through the chamber. The species they had dismissed as primitive had not only been active in galactic affairs for centuries, but had been working to promote stability and prevent conflicts. The Global Defense Initiative was founded with a simple mission, Vasquez continued: protect Earth from hostile forces while building alliances with peaceful civilizations. We've operated under the principle that the best defense is not isolation, but integration with like-minded species. Counselor Rathek, clearly shaken by these revelations, asked the question many were thinking. If you've had these capabilities for centuries, why reveal them now? Why not continue operating in secret? Vasquez's expression became serious. Because the threats facing the galaxy are evolving. Our analysis suggests that within the next 50 years, this region of space will face challenges that no single civilization can handle alone. The age of isolated species competing for resources is ending. The future belongs to those who can cooperate. She activated another display, this one showing deep space sensor readings from the edge of the galaxy. Our long-range detection systems have identified anomalous energy signatures moving toward populated space. Whatever is coming, it's larger and more organized than anything the galaxy has faced before. We believe that survival will require unprecedented cooperation between species. Chancellor Vexera studied the sensor data with growing concern. The energy patterns were unlike anything in the Council's extensive databases. You're proposing an alliance? We're proposing evolution, Vasquez replied. The current system of territorial expansion and resource competition has created centuries of conflict. Species waste energy fighting each other instead of advancing together. We believe there's a better way. She gestured, and the display showed images of human colonies throughout the galaxy. But these were not the hidden military bases that many had expected. Instead, they showed mixed populations, humans working alongside dozens of alien species in scientific research facilities, agricultural development projects, and technological innovation centers. For the past century, we've been quietly establishing what we call integration zones, Vasquez explained. Neutral territories where species can work together without the political constraints of their home governments. Scientists sharing research, farmers developing crops that can grow on multiple world types, engineers combining the best innovations from different civilizations. The images showed remarkable achievements, medical advances that could benefit dozens of species, environmental restoration projects that had saved dying worlds, and technological developments that surpassed anything achieved by isolated research. The results speak for themselves, Vasquez continued. Cooperative research produces innovations decades ahead of competitive development. Shared resources eliminate the scarcity that drives most conflicts. Cultural exchange prevents the misunderstandings that lead to wars. Ambassador Decalan of the Kethver Syndicate finally found his voice. You're suggesting that our entire approach to galactic expansion is wrong? I'm suggesting that expansion through conquest is inefficient, Vasquez replied calmly. Growing through cooperation produces better results, with far less costs in lives and resources. The Kethver Syndicate has spent enormous energy conquering and controlling 17 systems. Our integration zones have achieved greater technological and economic development across 43 systems. Using a fraction of those resources, the chamber buzzed with intense discussions as representatives considered the implications. The human proposal challenged fundamental assumptions about power, territory, and civilizational development that had guided galactic politics for millennia. Chancellor Vexara called for order once again. The Council requires time to consider these revelations and proposals. However, the immediate question remains: what is humanity's intention regarding the Kethver fleet currently in your system? Vasquez smiled. Commander Zekthos and his crews are welcome to remain as our guests while we discuss terms for their safe return home. We've prepared comfortable accommodations and would be happy to give them tours of our facilities. We believe that understanding breeds cooperation far more effectively than fear breeds submission. As the session adjourned, representatives filed out in small groups, engaged in animated conversations about everything they had learned. The galaxy's understanding of itself had fundamentally changed in a single day, and the species they had ignored for centuries had emerged as a potential catalyst for galactic transformation. In the observation deck above the main chamber, Chancellor Vexara watched the humans prepare to depart. For 800 years, she had presided over a council dedicated to maintaining balance between competing civilizations. Today, she had witnessed the proposal of something entirely new, a galactic community based on cooperation rather than competition. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for such a dramatic evolution. The new alliance 6 months after the revelation at the Galactic Council. Commander Zekthos stood in the observation lounge of the research station Harmony, watching ships from a dozen different civilizations dock at the facility's massive ports. The station orbited Earth's moon, a symbol of the new era of cooperation that had emerged from what initially seemed like a failed invasion. Zekthos had volunteered to remain as a cultural liaison after his crew had been given the choice to return home or participate in humanity's integration program. Most had chosen to stay, fascinated by the unprecedented opportunity to work alongside species they had previously only encountered as enemies or rivals. Still hard to believe, isn't it? Dr. Sarah Chen approached from behind, carrying 2 cups of the Earth beverage called coffee. She had become something of a friend over the past months, helping HFY personnel adapt to human customs and collaborative research methods. Zekthos accepted the cup gratefully. The bitter liquid had become a surprisingly pleasant habit. 6 months ago, I commanded a fleet sent to conquer your species. Now I'm designing defensive systems to protect multiple worlds from the threat you detected at the galaxy's edge. Through the observation window, they could see the construction scaffolding surrounding humanity's most ambitious project yet, the Alliance Defense Platform. The massive structure combined technologies from over 30 different civilizations, creating defensive capabilities that no single species could have achieved alone. The hegemony of Kree sent their best gravitational engineers last week, Chen noted, pointing toward a section where exotic machinery was being installed. They're working with Altarian energy specialists and human systems integration experts to create shield generators that can protect entire star systems. Zekthos marveled at the cooperation. 3 years ago, the Kree and Altarians had been locked in a territorial dispute that had cost thousands of lives. Now their scientists worked side by side, sharing innovations that benefited both civilizations. Dr. Chen, he said thoughtfully, may I ask you something that has puzzled me for months? Of course, when my fleet first arrived, you could have destroyed us completely. Your defensive capabilities far exceeded ours. Yet you chose restraint, even offered cooperation. In HFY culture, showing mercy to invaders is considered a fatal weakness. Why did humanity choose differently? Chen smiled. The expression that Zekthos had learned indicated both warmth and deep thinking among humans. Because we learned something important from our history. Commander, destroying enemies only creates more enemies, but turning enemies into allies, that creates something far more valuable. Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the station's communications system. All senior staff, please report to Conference Room Alpha. Priority 1 briefing is now beginning. They made their way through corridors that bustled with activity. Humans worked alongside beings whose forms ranged from crystalline entities to gas-based consciousness inhabiting mechanical bodies. The translation technology developed through collaborative efforts allowed seamless communication between species with completely different sensory and linguistic systems. Conference Room Alpha was filled with representatives from the 40 civilizations now participating in what had become known as the Terra Alliance. Admiral Morrison, now serving as humanity's Minister of Galactic Affairs, stood at the center of the room before a massive holographic display. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, Morrison began, our deep space monitoring stations have detected significant developments regarding the anomalous signatures approaching from the galaxy's edge. The display showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with moving indicators representing the mysterious entities. What had initially appeared to be a single massive object had resolved into something far more concerning, a fleet of ships unlike anything in known galactic databases. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, now leading the Alliance's Xenotechnology Research Division, stepped forward. Analysis of their energy patterns suggests these vessels operate on principles completely foreign to our understanding of physics. They appear to be using space-time manipulation for both propulsion and what we can only assume are weapons systems. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembled representatives. Several species had encountered similar technologies in their ancient mythologies, but none had ever seen them successfully implemented. How long until they reach inhabited space? Asked Ambassador Kelter of the Alt. At their current rate of approach, approximately 18 months, Morrison replied. However, their acceleration is increasing. They appear to be studying our galaxy's structure and adjusting their trajectory toward the most densely populated regions. Chancellor Vexara, attending via holographic projection from the Galactic Council chambers, addressed the Assembly. The Council has reviewed the Alliance's data and we formally recognize the Terra Alliance as a legitimate galactic organization and request assistance in coordinating a unified response to this threat. The statement represented a dramatic shift in galactic politics. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council was acknowledging that traditional territorial governments might not be sufficient to address a galaxy-wide crisis. Director Vasquez, who had been quietly reviewing data streams, looked up from her console. We've received responses from 234 civilizations expressing interest in joining the Alliance defensive preparations. That includes several species that have been at war with each other for centuries. Zekthos found this development particularly significant. The threat has succeeded in accomplishing what diplomacy could not, uniting former enemies. It's more than that, Chen added. It's proving that cooperation produces results that competition never could. Look at what we've achieved in just 6 months. The display shifted to show Alliance accomplishments. The defensive platform under construction represented technology decades ahead of what any single civilization possessed. Medical research had produced treatments for diseases that had plagued various species for millennia. Agricultural innovations had ended food scarcity on 17 worlds. Energy technologies had eliminated resource conflicts throughout Alliance space. The approaching entities may represent a threat, Morrison said, but they've also provided an opportunity. They've forced us to evolve beyond the limitations of isolated civilizations competing for finite resources. Dr. Tanaka activated a new display showing the Alliance's defensive strategy. We've developed what we call the Distributed Defense Network. Rather than attempting to stop the entities at the galaxy's edge, we're creating overlapping defensive zones throughout populated space. Each zone combines the best defensive technologies from multiple civilizations, adapted to local conditions and threats. The strategy was revolutionary. Instead of the traditional approach of massing forces for decisive battles, the Alliance planned to create a galaxy-wide immune system that could adapt and respond to threats anywhere they appeared. The key innovation, Tanaka continued, is redundancy and adaptation. If one defensive zone is compromised, surrounding zones can immediately adjust their configurations to compensate. The network becomes stronger and more sophisticated with each encounter. Ambassador Thekalan, who had arrived from Kethver space just days earlier, rose to address the Assembly. The Syndicate Council has voted to formally join the Terra Alliance. We offer our military experience and our territorial resources too. The common defense. This announcement sent a wave of surprise through the room. The Kethver Syndicate had been one of the galaxy's most aggressively expansionist civilizations. Their decision to join a cooperative alliance represented a fundamental shift in their cultural priorities. What changed their minds? Asked Councillor Zara of the Korvac Federation. Thekalan's expression was thoughtful. 6 months ago, we believed that strength came from conquest and domination, but observing the Alliance's achievements has shown us a different kind of strength. The power to create rather than destroy, to build rather than conquer, to unite rather than divide. Over the following hours, the Assembly worked through the practical details of expanding the Alliance to include hundreds of new civilizations. The challenges were enormous. Coordinating technologies that operated on completely different principles, managing cultural differences that had led to conflicts for millennia, and developing command structures that could function across species, with radically different concepts of authority and decision. But the solutions emerging from the collaborative effort were equally remarkable. Translation technologies that allowed direct mind-to-mind communication between species with no common reference points. Command protocols that utilized each species' natural strengths while compensating for their limitations. Resource allocation systems that eliminated scarcity by optimizing production and distribution across multiple worlds. As the session concluded, Zekthos found himself walking through the station's recreation areas with Chen and several other colleagues. The spaces buzzed with off-duty personnel from dozens of species sharing meals, entertainment, and friendship that would have been unimaginable months earlier. You know what I find most remarkable? Zekthos said, watching a group of young beings from 6 different species playing what appeared to be a hybrid of several traditional games. It's not just that our species are working together, it's that we're becoming something new. Chen nodded. The children born on Alliance stations and colonies won't think of themselves as primarily human or Kethver. They'll think of themselves as galactic citizens first. Is that what humanity intended from the beginning? Asked Dr. Yen, a crystalline being from the Resonance Collective who had joined their group. Honestly? Chen laughed. We were just trying to survive long enough to figure out how to get along with our neighbors, but maybe that's the point. Sometimes the best solutions emerge when you focus on solving immediate problems rather than implementing grand plans. They paused at an observation window that showed Earth hanging in space below them. The planet looked peaceful, but sensors revealed the incredible activity surrounding it. Hundreds of ships from dozens of civilizations moved in carefully coordinated patterns, carrying resources, personnel, and technology to support the Alliance's expanding operations. Whatever's coming from beyond the galaxy, Zykthos said quietly, it will find something here that has never existed before. Not just an alliance of civilizations, but a true galactic community. A civilization that spans species and star systems, united by cooperation rather than conquest. Morrison's voice came over the station's communication system. All personnel, this is Admiral Morrison. Long-range sensors have detected the first contact probes from the approaching entities. They will reach our outer monitoring stations in approximately 6 hours. All defensive networks are now at full operational status. As beings throughout the station moved to their assigned positions, Chen looked out at the stars with a mixture of anticipation and confidence. 6 hours until we learn whether our great experiment in galactic cooperation is strong enough to face the unknown. Zykthos checked his equipment and prepared to join his colleagues at the Defense Coordination Center. 6 months ago, he had come to conquer a primitive world. Now he was helping to defend a galactic civilization that represented the best hopes and innovations of hundreds of species. The irony was not lost on him. In seeking to expand the Kethfer Empire through conquest, he had instead discovered something far more valuable, a community where former enemies had become allies, where competition had evolved into cooperation, and where the combined strength of many civilizations had created possibilities that none could have achieved alone. As the station's defensive systems powered up and Alliance fleets throughout the galaxy prepared for first contact with the unknown entities, one thing was certain, the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity's quiet revolution had fundamentally changed what it meant to be a spacefaring civilization, and whatever challenges lay ahead would be met by a united galactic community rather than isolated competing species. The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation had begun.